Well, thanks everyone and welcome to my talk. So at the DPS Summit, we heard many success stories on how the developer productivity teams have helped the developer teams to be more productive and get better experience. But in this talk, I want to take it one level up and discuss how we can actually set a developer productivity team that has high productivity and that the people that work in this team, that they have good experience. And many big companies have already figured this out and they have well-established developer productivity teams. But for someone that wants to start on this journey, it's not so simple because we still don't have one keyword that we can search to find what is a good approach. These teams appear under a different name like developer productivity, developer experience, engineering productivity, and so on. But in the end, they all have a same mission. They all want to enhance the developer efficiency, improve the developer experience, have faster feedback cycles with which we can bring more value to the customers. And all these teams are based on data-driven initiatives. We have seen many talks on how we can collect good metrics that can drive our decisions to have a bigger impact in the company. And in some companies, like ours, the developer productivity team started out of a DevOps teams, and some companies they are started out of platform teams. But it's not enough just to rename the team. We need to change the structure of the team. So we need to think what other types of engineers we need besides, general DevOps engineers, platform engineers. So maybe you need to add a few more people in test, data analysts, and so on. Then we need to review what is the ownership of the team, see how we prioritize work, and change a bit the way how we communicate. And I will touch how we did all these changes through the 5 key transformations in our site. So the first thing that we wanted to do is just decrease the cognitive load of our team. And then we decided to develop self-service platforms that led to focusing more on quality. We harness the power of metrics, and we built a strong collaboration with the dev team. So I will go deeper in the next slides on each of these 5 topics. But before that, I want to make 2 disclaimers. So first of all, part of what I will present is based on our experience, but part are also some industry practices that I've seen from other companies, because when we decided to form the team 2 years ago, I started to read a lot on what's already there, because I have a research background, so I wanted to learn what is the state of the art, as that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. And the second disclaimer is that maybe some of these things won't apply to you. It really depends, what is your starting point, how mature is your team, how many people you have in the developer productivity team, and how many customers you have on the other side. So how many product teams you're serving, how many developers teams you have. And just to know where I'm coming from, so I work in Nexthink, and we are developing a platform for digital employee experience. On our side, we have 44 feature teams that are working on the platform, and they are comprised of 250 engineers. In general, the engineering and product department, we have about 350 people, but the 250 engineers are the ones that work on the product. And in my group, currently we have 12 engineers. Although most of the things that I will show here were done with the first group in the DevX group that consisted of 6 engineers last year. And we have 2 types of product. We have on-premise product and cloud product. And besides the cloud solution, we also have some user app browser extensions that the clients need to deploy on their laptops. So just to give also a bit of insights, what were our key achievements since we established the first team, the first engineering productivity team. The first thing that we looked is how we can improve the deployment of the microservices. And what we did is, first of all, we managed to improve the deployment time. So now we have 7 times faster deployment in production. So before, if it was taking about 35 minutes to 1 hour and a half, now we need about 15 minutes, 7 to 15 minutes to deploy the set of microservices that we have. Then we increase for 10 times the deployments within one of our internal integration environments. And we have 80% adoption of this new CD pipeline. The next big thing that we did is we improved our CI/CD system. So we used Jenkins and we improved its scalability and reliability. And what that resulted is that on our side, we got 40% reduction of the support tickets. And we built this solution Jenkins as code to manage the configuration of Jenkins, and we have 95 adoption of this solution. And finally, we improved our repository management system. We decided to move from an on-premise solution to cloud. Now we use GitHub. And we took this opportunity to build a new solution to manage the repositories configuration and settings through code. And we ensure that we will have embedded governance and security. So this really improved the practices within the company. So I'll start now with the first topic, and that is how we decrease the cognitive load. And I was very happy earlier this year when I saw that in the newest paper about DevX and what drives productivity, cognitive load was one of the 3 core dimensions of developer experience. And the authors here describe more about how we can improve the developer productivity of the development teams again, but we can apply the same for our teams. And on the other side, if you have read team topologies, maybe you have seen that the cognitive load can be improved by limiting the number of types of domain that one team owns. So as our team grew, we got more and more technologies that we need to support and maintain, and with this really increased the cognitive load. So this is why in the next few slides, I'll focus most on how we can decrease the cognitive load by decreasing the ownership of the team, and what happened, how we evolved on our side. So the first official DevOps team in Nexthink was formed in January 2019 by putting 3 people together, and they had different responsibilities. So we had the SDLC tools, then the release management and engineering, and the base VM for the on-premise product. And it was called product delivery. But as we embarked on our cloud journey and we needed more engineers to work with cloud technologies, and this team was quite enthusiastic about this, we got in many other new things. So we started to manage Kubernetes, Istio, Kafka. We started to deploy infrastructure that the dev team needs, like S3 buckets, secrets, lambdas, config maps. We started to work on deployment pipelines for the infrastructure, microservices, deployment environment in the cloud, access right management, feature flag, a tool for feature flag, and so on. So with this, you can see that the things that the team managed increased a lot. And at this point, we had 8 people in the team, but not everyone had good knowledge in all these topics. So we had experts in given areas, but not everyone can work on anything. And the other thing that was problematic was managing priorities. So when we had always something important on many different fronts, so it was hard to decide what we will tackle first. And in April 2022, we did the first split of the team, and we formed the engineering productivity team that I mentioned before. And this team took over all the development-related topics. So everything that is connected to how our developers work and how our processes, it went under this team. And then in the same time, everything that was somehow product-related, supporting the product to be deployed in the cloud or on-premise, it went to the team that we called Platform Systems. And this team was initially part of another platform group, but this year in January, we decided to bring it in under developer experience group, but we decided to remove also some things of its ownership. So we handed over Kubernetes and Istio to another platform team, and we're now looking on how we can hand over the base VM for the on-premise product because it's not really related to connected to our mission. And we have another team that is taking over all the things that were connected to the on-premise product. So this should happen sometime early next year. And for me, this is not the end. So we still want to have smaller and more focused team. And I will present what's my vision for the future, although we'll see whether this will become a reality or we will come up with another plan. But we're already working on forming a dedicated Kafka team. And we don't want just to work on managing the Kafka lifecycle, but we really want to make more to work closer with the developers, take advantage of all the DevX practices that we know. So we want to share what are the best practices of using Kafka, how they can use it more efficiently, make sure that we are set for all the new data that we need to absorb, and we have a system that is scalable and cost effective. Then in terms of deployment of the cloud infrastructure and the pipelines for the infrastructure, we want to change how we work. So now we're still serving singular requests that come to our team, and we want to move more to building infrastructure as a code platform. And we did this already with one project about defining S3 buckets through code. So a team can come and say, okay, I want an S3 bucket in this region, I want to have replication, and I want the replication to happen in these regions, and then we have a backend that will spin off this. Then we have a lot of things about the dev environments that we want to improve, and this is kind of one of the main pain points that our teams currently have. So it would also make sense to have a team that will ensure that our processes for creating and managing these environments is effective. And then on the other side, it makes sense to have a tooling team that will take care of all the tools and the setup that we have internally to make sure that we are getting the complete value out of them. And maybe a team on CI/CD that will work closely with the teams on the pipelines and how we're using these tools. We'll see if this will happen, but that's my vision. And this is just one part on how you decrease the cognitive load by decreasing the ownership. There are other things that you can do, and I think one of the most important things is to maintain a roadmap for work prioritization, because we don't want the team to have too many items on which they need to work at the same time. And here it's also good what was mentioned in the previous talk, if you saw, to have a PM that can help us to prioritize the work, talk with the stakeholders, ensure that we have the right metrics and so on. Then we need to set an efficient support system, and on our side we have like one person dedicated on a support each sprint, and we change the people in a round-robin fashion. With this, we are ensuring that this one person will do all the requests that are coming from the dev teams, and then the rest of the team is kind of shielded to work on actual work that brings value. What I've seen also is that in some companies, like in Twitter, they have tier 1 support team, and then these teams is the first line of defense in a way that gets the tickets, and then if they don't manage to resolve them, then they escalate to the other DevX teams. And as I mentioned, it's quite useful to introduce a PM role, or if you cannot do that immediately, just act as a PM, maintain the roadmap, talk to the developers to understand what are their pain points, drive adoption, and so on. So now when we had set the team, we decided to develop self-service platforms. And this is mainly because before, our team was getting a lot of individual requests, and it was considered to be also like a bottleneck. Because you can imagine on this side, we have 250 people filing this request, and on the other side, you have 6 to 8 people that are responding to the request. So of course, this is not scalable. And this is why we decided to build self-service platforms. And in our team, we like to do things as a code. So for all of these requests, we decided to address them with a system where the developers can be autonomous in getting the services and tools that they need by defining them as code. So for example, for the cases where they were asking us to get access to a given tool, we built a repository where we managed the role-based access control as code. So now the onboarding is very easy, because when someone new arrives in the company or someone changes a team, they just need their name has to be added under the respective team, and they will get automatically all the access that the other members of the team has. And now when we are introducing new tool, it's mandatory that this tool is integrated with the system as well, so we can define the access control easily. Then we were getting other requests like, I need a new Jenkins controller or an agent. And in this case, we decided to work on something like Jenkins as code. So now we are managing all the configuration for Jenkins as a code. And we have these ephemeral agents that are spinned whenever there is something in the build queue. And we allow the teams to define what they need to have on the agent. So we have a default agent that's available on every controller. But then if they want to have some specific requirements like more CPUs, memory, another tool installed, they can do that through the repository and define it by themselves. Then for all the requests around the repositories, at some point we decided that we want to have better security, because in one of the audits it was detected that we have some things that are not properly defined, and we decided to centralize the creation and management of repositories. So to make this easier for the teams, we also, when we migrated to GitHub, we did something that we call GitHub as code, with which we manage the repository creation and settings through code. So with this, we can ensure that, okay, code signing is always enabled. Your main branches that go to production have the right settings enabled, like unit code reviews, and the code is right and so on. And then finally, for everything that is in terms of deployment, first of all, as I mentioned, we want to have more infrastructure as a service platforms, and we also build a CD pipeline to deploy the microservices in the internal environment. And here it's very important to mention that whenever we are building a new self-service platform, we ensure that it's highly configurable. So for example, for the CD pipeline, we have like 3 main build tools that are used in our company, and our team is not managing them. So we have to ensure that our pipeline is configurable enough so that it will work with the 3 of them, and then also it can fit different use cases that to fit the different workflows that other different teams have. So the result of this is that now the developers are autonomous to obtain all these required services and tools. They don't need to file a ticket to us, wait for us to resolve the ticket, and this has also reduced the cognitive load. Actually, if you're interested in self-service platforms, it's good to read also the Gartner report that I put here at the bottom. And this is kind of in the top technology trends that teams are applying today. And I mentioned, but on our side, on the DP team, this allowed our team to have better scalability and throughput, and to improve the flow state, because now we are not getting these tickets anymore, but we can focus on improving these platforms and adding new features for them. And if we want to look like how it impacted the number of support tickets, this is what the number of tickets we had open in 21-22, in September 21-22. And so these are the tickets that were kind of in validation. They're just pending to get a green light from the developers that everything is okay. The green ones are the ones in progress, but the orange ones are the ones that bothered me the most, because these are the ones that are waiting, that are in to-do mode. And this is these are the tickets that are blocking the teams from their daily work. So what happened after September, when we introduced Jenkins as code, we had a CD pipeline, is that we actually reduced a lot the number of open tickets that we had at a given point, but you still see these peaks from time to time. And these peaks are very important, because you need to account that whenever you're introducing something new that the teams need to adopt, you need to support them. So actually they correlate quite well with the time, for example, when we rolled out the CD pipeline and we wanted all the teams to adopt it, or when we improved the format for environment-specific configuration and we decide, okay, from now on, we will use this also for production, not just for the internal environment. And the biggest peak is when we migrated all the 1,000 repositories to GitHub. So once you have these self-service platforms, don't forget to treat them as a product. Make sure you plan improvements, talk to the teams to understand what they're missing. Act as a PM or hire a PM if you can. Then when you're building them, use the opportunity to embed governance and security policies from the start, so you can ship the security left in the process and facilitate adoption. So this is very important, and we do this in 3 different ways. So first of all, we always have pilot teams for our new self-service platform that help us to refine how we are building the platforms, and then they're also like great advocates because they can show to the rest of the teams how this improves their daily work. Then the second point is to always prepare starting guides for the teams to know, like, okay, if I want to start to work with this, what should I do? Or if I need to migrate from one to another solution, what are the steps that I need to take? Do workshops to educate people, demos, and then the third thing that we often do when we have big launches is that we also create like dedicated communication channels where people can ask us questions. And this is not just for us to answer their questions, but also they can answer the questions from their peers. So we also get help from the development teams in answering similar questions or issues that they have faced. And finally, design for habitability. You need to provide intuitive and safe interface for the users. And there is this great talk by Sam Newman from 22, but I still recommend to see it if you're building a self-service platform. And the safe interface actually brings me to the next topic, which is why now we need to focus on quality. Even when we were a DevOps team, we were testing what we were providing to the teams, but we didn't work on things like regression testing, nightly runs, and things like that. But now when we have a platform that we need to maintain, and maybe at some point we want to introduce a new feature, we need to ensure that when we will change something, all the old things will continue to work as they were. And usually the DevOps team, like at least in our case, we didn't have a dedicated quality engineer. So we decided actually to introduce one so we can have a dedicated focus on quality. The benefit of having a dedicated QA engineer is that this person will be kind of protected of all the pressure to deliver new increments, and they can bring knowledge that the rest of the team doesn't have, maybe on how to set up test frameworks, and how you can use the test tools that you have, and just improving the test practices in general. The other solution that you can do, because the dedicated QA engineers, the bad thing is that they are hard to find, especially if you want to have someone that knows infrastructure as code technologies like Terraform, Ansible, Docker, and so on. The other solution is to find a DevOps or platform engineer with a QA background. And we have a few of them in our teams, and what I've noticed is they are much more enthusiastic for test automation and improving the practices in the team, so they can be really drivers to improve the quality in the practices that you have. And on the same side, they have great knowledge of infrastructure as code technologies. So the goal of these people, it's very important to mention, is not that they will be the only ones writing code, because they might be one person, like if you have a dedicated QA engineer. In our case, it was one person for 5 engineers on the other side. So everyone should write tests, but these are the people that can really enhance like how you do testing. So some examples of what we did: for example, we ensure that we have compatibility between our CI runners, the Jenkins agents, and the standard build tools by building a nightly job that will build an example microservice with the free tools that are most commonly used in our company. And then if there is something failing because something changed on the runner or something changed on the build tool, then we get an alert and we can react fast. Or if we are changing something on the runners that we manage, because we don't manage the build tools, then we can notice when we are doing these changes, we can also launch that job and ensure that we don't push these changes out if there is some issue. So then we also added validation of requirements on all the PRs for deployment of microservices. So whenever a team is opening a PR to change the version that should go to production, then we run some layers of validation to ensure that all requirements are met. And this decreased highly the number of failures that we had when we were deploying things in our end-to-end environments, or if we handed over things to production. Because, for example, we validated all the environment configuration that are specific to production. We have the right keys, the right values, or that the image exists and it's pushed in the right repository. And the final one is one of my favorite. It's about schema validation of the YAML configuration for the self-service platform. So as I said, we built the self-service platform to have everything as code. And we usually use YAML files to define, the themes for the airbag repository or the settings of the repository in the GitHub as code. And what we do is schema validation of what's provided in the YAML file. We ensure that the keys that the teams provided are supported, because it's very easy for someone to make a typo and then this to pass unnoticed. Or we also validate that the values that they provide are expected, they're in the good format, or if we want to enforce something like having some labels or who is the owner team, then we can ensure that these values are defined from start. And the benefit of focusing on quality is that now we can have better productivity and experience, because the tools and services that we provide have good quality and the teams are not facing with so many issues. So again, we have less support tickets on our side, and our team has moved to proactive issue resolution. We can detect issues early, and we have more time for strategic work. So the action items on this side is to bring some QA knowledge in the team if you don't have it already. Then the quality, as I mentioned, has to be a shared mission in the DPA team. The QA person should not be the only one writing tests, and it's good also to make the quality part of the definition of done. So having tests should be part of everything new that we will bring in. And then, as I mentioned, also we introduce some alerts to detect important failures, and we can react fast to fix issues, or you can have like peer comments to inform teams that something is going wrong. And now I'll briefly talk about metrics, but I won't talk about DORA or SPACE, for which you already know. The first and very important thing on our side is about what is the feedback that we get from our developers, because they're our customers. And in research and marketing, this concept of voice of the customer, this is a method to get what are the expectation and experience of your customer about the product that you offer them. And here, because our customers are the developers, we want to hear their voice. We want to understand what are the main pain points that they're highlighting during their reviews, when we talk to them, to their manager, what is reaching the CTO of our organization. And then we also look like what are the struggles that are visible on public chat, what are the things they have issues with. We also launch some surveys to get feedback, and we get statistics from our support tickets. So for example, for the CD pipeline that we develop, we can hear the developers how they're complaining, and this really is our CTO, that they're waiting for hours or maybe a day for their PR to be deployed into this global integration environment, and the PMs were complaining that they don't see the features that the developers told them that they're ready. So this is why our management decided that this will be the first initiative for us. And then in terms of support tickets, when we were looking sprint by sprint, what are the topics for which the tickets are open, we saw that 75% of the tickets were about Jenkins. And this is why we decided to work on Jenkins as code and to have these ephemeral agents. And once you choose your initiative, you need to choose metrics that are appropriate and tailored to your initiative. So if we measure the frequency of deployment in production, we wouldn't have seen the improvements of our initiative because it was only targeting an internal environment. But when we looked, for example, on what is happening in our internal environment, we saw that just in 3 months, we had 10 more deployments, and we also measured adoption, and we see that we have 50% increase of the legacy method. We were also usually we have also dashboard to see how the adoption is going into more details. So we could see which teams completed the adoption, which is still pending or in progress, and who didn't start. And this is giving a good indication for us to know which teams we should contact and understand, is it an issue on their side? They cannot prioritize this work, so maybe we need to speak with our managers and to explain why this is important. Or is it an issue on our side? Maybe we have not provided a feature that they need, so we need to improve the platform that we provide for them. So I'll be short here. Make sure to make metrics part of the team mission, because these are data-driven teams, and it will help you highly to prioritize your work, because you can see what you need to tackle to have biggest impact. Hear the voice of the developer, because in the end we want to enhance the developer experience. So if your developers are complaining about how we release things and not about the build time, probably you should tackle and see how can we release things faster, and you should not focus on improving the build time, even if it's not great. And then use metrics that are tailored for the initiative and to drive adoption. So you can, first of all, see and show what are the improvements that you did. And then other teams can also see the benefits, and they will be motivated by this to follow the rest of the teams and to adopt the things that you are providing for them. And finally, my last topic is about strengthening the collaboration with the dev teams. And we already know how our companies are doing things with our customers, right? They do product announcements, documentation, demo trainings, technical support. They have customer success programs. So because our DPA teams are customer-centric, we want to do the same for them. And with this, you can build also very strong team APIs that your customers, the developers, will know where to look for things and how to contact you in different situations. So some examples of what we did is that we set up a weekly meeting for important announcements, news, and office hours. And we did this for the first project, but it was so useful and well accepted that we decided to keep it. And now it's a standard thing that we have it in the past year. Then we write a lot of documentation for the internal setup of tools and governance and how the teams can start using the things that we provide. And the best comment that I got, like validation of this thing, is that at one workshop, one of the developers came and they said how impressed they were because when people were asking questions, we could almost for all the questions we could reply like, yes, we have that covered, go and read it on this page. So we always try to write the things that the developer should know. Then, as I mentioned before, we open dedicated communication channels for adoption of big changes, so developers can help between themselves and they can also contact us more easily. We held workshops and trainings, not just for the new things, but also for the things that are already set for a couple of years, because we want to remind people on what are the best practices, how to get most out of the tools that we have. We have a dedicated support board for everything that is existing, and if they have issues, they can open ticket there. And then, as I mentioned, we launched surveys to get their feedback in to see like, okay, we introduced this change. What do you think? What was your experience? And then we collect comments to know like what we need to improve. So make sure when you build stuff to have developer-centric solutions and prioritize also this work. So account that you will need to write documentation, have workshops, and help teams to adopt what you're building. Then set strong team APIs by having established communication channels for different purposes. And like this, you can build like closer collaboration with the developers. They will trust more in terms of what you're building. And something that I didn't put on the slide is also showed your roadmap. And this have helped a lot in terms of managing expectations, because we can tell them, okay, look, this is the plan for us until the end of the year. And we know that you want to have these things earlier, but we really need to take it step by step. And the things that you're asking, they will come, but maybe not immediately. And yeah, that's all from me. My take-home message is simple. I hope that you got some ideas on what you can do either to create such a team or how you can improve things in your existing teams. And with this, you can really unleash their potential and get better, faster, and stronger results. And it's not just about the results. I think the teams itself, they will be better, faster, and stronger, because the people that work in this team, they will have better experience and they will be more proud of the things they build because they're widely adopted, they have good quality, and they have big impact. And then they will be faster because now we have higher throughput of the team and we can address more things in short period. And then you can have stronger results because the impact will be higher. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.